The bank officer believed he held all the power, casually denying my crucial loan. What he didn't know was that I'd already bought the bank, and his job was next on my agenda. The fluorescent lights of the private banking suite hummed, a sound so sterile it felt like a prelude to bad news. I smoothed the lapel of my suit for the 10th time, trying to project an aura of calm I absolutely did not possess. Across the polished mahogany desk sat Mr. Harrison, the loan officer. He was everything you picture, impeccably tailored, silver-haired, and possessed of that specific brand of condescension that only comes from managing other people's fortunes. "Mr. Jackson," he began, his tone clipping the edges off my name like he was filing down a rough diamond. He didn't look up from the thick sheaf of documents I'd provided. My life's work, compressed into quarterly statements and projections. "I appreciate you coming in today. However, after rigorous review of your application for the commercial real estate financing," I leaned forward slightly, gripping the edge of the desk. "The money wasn't just for a building. It was the foundation for the first major development project in my neighborhood in 3 decades. Mr. Harrison, my financials are immaculate. The collateral is secured, the projected returns are conservative, and I have personal capital injection that exceeds 40% of the required loan. What exactly is the issue?" Harrison finally lifted his eyes. They were the pale, washed-out blue of a winter sky. He gave me a tight, dismissive smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's not the paperwork, Mr. Jackson. It's the risk profile. This institution prides itself on stability. We prefer established partners. Frankly, your portfolio, while commendable for a self-made entrepreneur, doesn't quite align with the gravitas we seek for a loan of this magnitude." The implication hung there, thick and suffocating. Gravitas. I knew what he meant. I was the first black man in my family to attend an Ivy League, the first to start a multi-million-dollar contracting firm. But in this room, under these lights, I was still just the statistic he was trying to mitigate. "Gravitas," I repeated slowly, letting the word sour in my mouth. "Are you suggesting my 7 successful contracts in the last 5 years aren't sufficient proof of my ability to execute a manageable repayment schedule?" He sighed, the sound theatrical, as if dealing with me was exhausting his considerable reserves. "Let's be direct, Mr. Jackson. This is a significant sum. We are just not comfortable being the first major institution to back a venture of this scale, led by someone, without a long-established history within our clientele base." He tapped a manicured finger onto a specific line on the projection sheet. "We'll pass. Perhaps try a community bank. They might be more amenable to non-traditional investments." The heat rose in my chest, sharp and immediate. I didn't raise my voice, but the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mr. Harrison, the land acquisition closes in 72 hours. If I cannot secure this financing, the deal collapses, and I lose the deposit. You understand the implications of this denial?" "Indeed," he said, standing up, an obvious gesture that the meeting was over. "Which is why I advise you to seek alternatives quickly. Good day, Mr. Jackson." He walked around the desk, extending a hand that felt cold and limp. I didn't take it. Instead, I placed my briefcase on the desk, the leather squeaking softly. "Before I go, Mr. Harrison, I have one more item I need your signature on. It's not part of the loan application, but it's relevant to my presence here." He frowned, pausing mid-reach for his own documents. "What is this?" "I told you. We've made our decision." "This isn't about the loan decision," I corrected him, my voice low and steady. I opened the briefcase and pulled out a single, thick, ivory-colored envelope sealed with official-looking gold foil. It was addressed simply to the CEO, but Harrison had the authority to accept all official correspondence pertaining to the branch's operations. "Look at the seal, Mr. Harrison, then look at the return address. This is from the internal auditors of the holding company. I need your signature confirming receipt and immediate review, as per the bylaws." Harrison's condescension faltered for the first time. He took the envelope, handling the heavy paper gingerly. He didn't recognize the seal immediately, but the sheer weight of officialdom in the document made him pause. He found a fountain pen and scribbled his name onto the receipt log inside the envelope flap. "Now, Mr. Harrison, I continued, leaning back, allowing myself a very small, genuine smile. Since we are concluding business, I think it's only fair that I show you exactly why I was so certain about the viability of my proposal. After all, when one invests significant personal capital, one expects a certain level of due diligence from the servicing institution. I reached into the briefcase again, this time pulling out a single, crisp black card, entirely devoid of logos or fancy script. It was thick stock, embossed with a single silver initial, a large M. You see, Mr. Harrison, I didn't just come here seeking capital. I came here to place an investment, a very specific long-term investment. You mentioned that you prefer partners with established gravitas within this institution. You suggested that my portfolio wasn't aligned with your typical clientele. I pushed the card across the desk. It stopped perfectly in front of him. Harrison blinked, looking down at the card, then back up at me, a flicker of annoyance mixing with confusion. I don't understand. What is this? A business card? He scoffed, about to discard it. No, I interrupted, my voice suddenly resonating with a different kind of authority, the kind that demands silence. That is not a business card, Mr. Harrison. That is the key card for the executive board meeting tomorrow morning. And the investment I've made, the one that required gravitas, was purchasing a controlling interest in this entire holding company 6 months ago. Harrison stared at the card, his pale face starting to drain of color. His eyes darted from the silver M to my own calm expression. I own the majority stake in this bank, Mr. Harrison. You work for me, and I require that loan to be approved by the end of the business day, effective immediately, or you can explain to the new board chairman exactly why you chose to deny the primary shareholder a routine commercial loan based on gravitas. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the distant, muffled sounds of city traffic filtering through the reinforced windows. Harrison didn't move. He was a statue carved from expensive tweed and sudden dread. His hand, the one that had just signed the receipt for the internal audit notification, began to tremble visibly, rattling the expensive fountain pen he still gripped. His eyes flickered between the silver M on the card and my face, searching for the punchline, the hidden camera, the elaborate, cruel joke. But my face was a mask of professional finality. Mr. Jackson, he finally managed, the name emerging as a strangled croak. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing convulsively. I wasn't aware. The internal communication regarding the acquisition was handled through the New York office, and frankly, the restructuring details are opaque, even to division managers. Opaque to division managers, perhaps, I cut in, leaning forward again, my tone shifting from severe to chillingly instructive, but not opaque to the people who handle the final escrow and asset valuation reports, which I review daily. You see, Mr. Harrison, when you're buying a building for $5 million, you check the loan application. When you're buying a multi-billion-dollar financial institution, you examine the organizational chart. I slowly picked up the black card, turning it over in my fingers before setting it back down squarely on the stack of loan denial paperwork. I didn't come here for a fight, Harrison. I came here for a signature. My goal was never to take money from the bank. It was to invest in the infrastructure that allows people like me to build futures without begging for permission. And now, I need you to prove you understand the new chain of command. His face was turning a ghastly shade of gray. He looked genuinely ill. The color leached out of his complexion until he resembled the paper on his desk. He snatched up the loan packet, his hands moving with a frantic, unpracticed energy. The loan, he gasped, by fumbling with the pages. Yes, of course. The terms, we can absolutely. I must have misread the initial risk assessment. I will personally guarantee the file is moved to the priority queue. We can have the commitment letter ready by end of day, I confirmed, nodding once. And I need a full explanation, in writing, detailing the procedural lapses that led you to believe you could deny a loan to the controlling shareholder based on what I can only describe as institutional bias. He grabbed a blank sheet of embossed letterhead, his penmanship suddenly illegible with haste. Yes, Mr. Jackson, immediately. I will draft it now. Please accept my sincerest apologies. This will never happen again. He wrote with a desperate intensity, clearly focused on survival. I watched him, letting the moment linger, savoring the precise calibration of power exchange. He was drowning, and I held the only piece of driftwood. "Good," I said, rising to my feet. I picked up my briefcase. I have a board meeting to prepare for, and I don't want to have to interrupt my opening remarks to deal with legacy issues. I paused at the door, my hand on the brass knob. This was the satisfying part, the final twist of the knife that ensured obedience. "There's one more thing, Harrison. You mentioned my neighborhood project needed a bank with more gravitas. The development requires that 5 million. But the revitalization initiative I'm planning for the surrounding area requires significantly more capital, 100 million, allocated over 3 years. That's the real investment I'm bringing to this branch." Harrison stopped writing dead still. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with avarice battling with terror. 100 million. That was the kind of money that secured promotions, golden parachutes, and retirement on a yacht. 100 million, he whispered, his voice regaining a dangerous edge of enthusiasm. "Mr. Jackson, that is revolutionary. We can structure a dedicated community development fund immediately. I have excellent contacts on the municipal side. If you'd like, I can personally spearhead the entire process, leveraging our new relationship." "Leveraging our relationship," I echoed, stepping back into the room slightly. "Exactly. That's what I expect. But Harrison, you need to understand how this works now. That $100 million fund isn't your next big bonus. It's my commitment to my community, which you will now service with efficiency and respect." I leaned in close enough that he could smell the expensive cologne I'd chosen this morning, the one meant to convey success, not apology. "And because you started this day by treating me like a high-risk loan applicant instead of your employer," I continued, my voice dropping to a near whisper, "I need you to understand the cost of that initial mistake. You signed the receipt confirming the auditors were notified. That means the official review of your branch's operational integrity begins first thing tomorrow morning." Harrison went utterly rigid. He knew what that meant. Internal audits weren't just about spotting fraud. They were about rooting out inefficiency, waste, and, crucially, bad judgment calls that cost the institution revenue. "Wait," he stammered, pushing the half-written apology letter away. "Mr. Jackson, please. I'll approve the 5 million right now. I'll personally draft the 100 million proposal. Don't let the audit proceed yet. I assure you, my record is clean, but this timing—" I held up a hand, stopping him cold. "The timing is perfect, Harrison. You see, the audit is already triggered. It's set to start when the building closes in 3 days. However," I let the pause stretch agonizingly, "I am the one who controls the release of the auditor's mandate." I tilted my head, offering him a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. "You can spend the next 3 days working around the clock to prove to me, personally, that you are a valuable asset capable of managing $100 million with the respect it deserves. Or, you can watch those auditors systematically dismantle your career starting Wednesday morning, regardless of whether that 5 million loan gets approved or not. Which path do you choose, Harrison? Redemption or immediate termination when I sign the release order?" Harrison didn't even look at the loan papers anymore. His entire focus had narrowed to the razor's edge of his own professional existence. He stared at me, his eyes wide, reflecting the harsh overhead light, searching desperately for a loophole that didn't exist. The idea of a full internal audit, a systematic stripping bare of his 7 years as a high-level manager, was clearly more terrifying than any financial loss. "Mr. Jackson, sir, please," he pleaded, leaning over the desk toward me, abandoning all pretense of professional distance. His bespoke suit suddenly looked like a costume. "Give me a chance to correct this. I'll work through the night. I will personally structure the loan with maximum favorable terms. I will have the 100 million proposal drafted by dawn, with 3 distinct funding streams mapped out. I will prove my commitment to your vision for the community. Just postpone the audit. Give me that grace period." I let the silence stretch again, allowing his fear to bake in. He was finally understanding the true weight of the decision he'd made earlier that morning when he dismissed me with a wave of his hand. "Grace period," I mused, tapping my finger lightly on the black shareholder card. "Grace is earned, Harrison, not granted. You gambled that I was too small to fight back effectively within this system. You gambled that I would just slink away and find a lesser bank. That gamble cost you your comfort. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Here is the deal. The $5 million loan is approved, effective immediately. I want the commitment letter on my desk before you leave the building today. That is non-negotiable, and it is the cost of your immediate survival. Harrison nodded frantically, already reaching for his phone, likely to call his subordinates and issue panic-level directives. Yes, sir, done. The loan will be ready. Wait, I commanded, and he froze, phone halfway to his ear. The second part concerns the audit. I'm not going to cancel it. Canceling it implies I made an error in judgment, and I never do. However, I will put it on hold, indefinitely. His relief was palpable, washing over him in a visible wave. Thank you. Hey, Mr. Jackson, I won't let you down. You have 1 week, I stated firmly. 7 days to present me with the preliminary framework for the $100 million Community Development Fund. It must be aggressive, innovative, and clearly demonstrate how this branch will actively support minority-owned businesses and underserved properties in the greater metro area, not just in passing, but as a central pillar of your strategy. I paused, leaning down one last time to ensure every word sank in. If that proposal is not excellent, if it's timid, if it smells of the same cautious, pale thinking that kept you from seeing my collateral this morning, then the audit starts on day 8, and it will be conducted by a specialized team I personally hired last night, one that reports only to the shareholder representative on the board. They won't be looking for procedural errors, Harrison. They'll be looking for grounds for termination. I straightened up, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. The initial battle was won. I turned toward the door, ready to leave him to his frantic damage control. One last thing before I go, Mr. Harrison, I said, stopping with my hand back on the brass knob. I turned back, locking eyes with him one final time. You mentioned earlier that my personal history, being self-made, didn't lend the necessary gravitas to the situation. I want to make sure that perception is fully corrected before I leave this building today. I reached into my inner jacket pocket and withdrew my wallet. I extracted a small, unassuming photograph, black and white, slightly worn at the edges, and placed it gently on top of the shareholder card. It was an old photo, taken perhaps 50 years prior. It showed a much younger, impossibly earnest version of Mr. Harrison, standing stiffly beside a man in an impeccably tailored suit, a man whose face was remarkably familiar to anyone who followed high finance. "This is you, Harrison," I said quietly, gesturing to the younger man in the photo. "You look so hopeful. And this is your father, Richard Harrison, the man who was the primary architect of the very lending structure that allowed this bank to become what it is today, the man who built the initial portfolio." Harrison stared at the picture, his breath catching in his throat. The color returned to his cheeks instantly. But this time it was the flush of pure, concentrated horror. He recognized his father's posture, the bespoke tailoring, the confidence he himself had tried to mimic that morning. "My father," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "How do you have this? He passed away before I even became an officer here." "He didn't just pass away, Harrison," I corrected him, my voice now laced with the steel of inherited legacy. "He died believing this bank, the institution he bled for, would always serve the ambitious, not just the entitled. He died believing in fairness." I pointed to the signature he'd just scrawled on the internal audit receipt, the signature confirming he had accepted the notice regarding the holding company's primary shareholder. "Your father didn't just start the lending structure, Harrison. He built the initial trust fund that held the controlling, non-dilutable 49% of the common stock. The stock that, upon his death, was legally transferred according to his will." I smiled a cold, final smile. "The stock that I inherited from my mother, his estranged sister, 3 years ago. You thought you were denying a loan to a successful black contractor. You were actually denying a loan to your own cousin, the man who inherited the only substantial portion of stock that wasn't locked into the executive management trust." I stepped toward the door again, the weight of the entire banking dynasty shifting onto Harrison's shoulders. "So Harrison, when you start drafting those proposals, remember this photograph. Remember the name of the man who actually funded your father's rise. Because if I decide that your poor judgment today is somehow reflective of a broader, familial disrespect toward the true architects of this institution, I won't need an audit team to justify firing you. I'll just need to call the family attorney and remind him exactly who controls the estate that holds the swing vote on the Board of Governors. Harrison didn't move from behind the desk. He looked as if he had been physically struck, the blood draining away so fast that his perfectly groomed silver hair seemed to stand out against his ashen face. He looked down at the photograph, his father, standing proudly next to a vibrant, smiling woman who had clearly been the black sheep of the family, and then up at me, the stranger who held not just his job, but the entire trajectory of his family's name in his hands. My aunt was Richard's sister? He finally whispered, the realization fracturing his composure entirely. But the family lore, there was always a rift. He always said she chose other paths. She chose equity, Harrison, I corrected him gently, pulling the door open just enough to let the sounds of the busy office floor seep in, a reminder of the world that was watching, or soon would be. She chose to build something real, outside the gilded cage your father helped construct. And now, that real equity is mine. I stepped fully into the doorway, allowing the sunlight from the hallway to wash over the mahogany desk, illuminating the precarious landscape of his career. You asked me to prove my gravitas. Gravitas isn't just about signing big checks. It's about knowing the history, the foundation, and the true owners. You failed that test spectacularly this morning. I paused, letting the weight of the situation settle. I had made my point. Destroying him wasn't the objective. Restructuring the system was. Ruining him over a single moment of prejudice would only create a martyr and invite scrutiny that could delay my larger goals. I needed him compliant, terrified, and highly motivated. Here is the final resolution, Harrison. Consider this your probationary period. I walked back to the desk, closing the door softly behind me. Harrison flinched, expecting a final dismissal, but instead, I pulled up the chair adjacent to his own. I want that $5 million commitment letter ready for my review in 1 hour. I need proof of transfer initiation by 3 o'clock this afternoon. You will personally oversee the expedited process to ensure no further procedural hurdles arise. He scrambled for a clean sheet of paper, grabbing a fresh pen as if preparing for a life-or-death surgery. 1 hour. Yes, Mr. Jackson. Consider it done. Good. Now, about the $100 million. You will be the primary executive liaison for the Community Investment Fund, CIF. You will report directly to me and only me. You will stop looking at the bottom line through the lens of quarterly shareholder dividends and start looking at it through the lens of community transformation. You will approve the right loans. Loans that build infrastructure, create jobs, and establish generational wealth in neighborhoods this institution has deliberately ignored for decades. I leaned back, the chair creaking slightly under my weight. A small, a satisfying sound of ownership. For the next 12 months, your success will be measured by the tangible economic uplift in the designated zones, not by your ability to reject applicants who look like me. Harrison meticulously noted down the CIF directive. His compliance now was absolute, born not of respect, but of a profound, humbling fear. He was no longer the gatekeeper. He was the steward of a borrowed tenure. And the audit? He asked, his voice still strained but showing a flicker of hope. The audit is suspended. I will not release the mandate, contingent on your flawless execution of the next 7 days. If you deliver an exceptional, transformative CIF proposal by the deadline, I will withdraw the auditor request permanently. You get to keep your job, your reputation, AC, and you get a front-row seat to the actual business of building capital in the modern economy. I rose, picking up the photograph of his father and his aunt. I folded it neatly and slid it into my own inner pocket, a private reminder of the leverage I now wielded. If you fail, Harrison, I concluded, walking to the door and pausing with my hand on the knob for the final time, I won't have to fire you. I'll simply appoint a trustee to oversee the distribution of the community fund, and then I'll hand the executive board minutes, which detail your morning's performance, to the new chairman. You'll find that institutional memory runs deep when you're trying to cling to the wreckage. I opened the door, letting the ambient noise of the bank rush back in. This time, I didn't hesitate. I stepped out, nodding curtly to the perplexed administrative assistant waiting outside. As I walked away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the energy shifting behind that closed mahogany door. The sterile hum of the lights remained, but now, beneath it, I could almost hear the frantic, terrified scratching of a pen desperately trying to rewrite a career, and perhaps, finally, rewrite a legacy. The bank was mine, and the real work of fixing it had just begun.